Today, we're heading inland to the desert country at the northern end of South Australia, where an incredible natural phenomenon is unfolding. In March, millions of litres of water fell as rain across Western Queensland, water which over the past couple of months has been gradually making its way down through Channel Country towards the lowest point on the Australian continent at Kati Thanda-Lake Eyre, our biggest salt lake. At the southern edge of the Simpson Desert, just north of Kati Thanda-Lake Eyre, lies one of the largest privately owned protected areas in Australia, Kalamurina Wildlife Sanctuary. And today it's my pleasure to be speaking with Australian Wildlife Conservancy's managers there, Luke Playford and Dr. Annemarie van Doorn. Luke and Annemarie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
My pleasure. To start with, I'd love to hear how you both came to be working at one of the most remote wildlife sanctuaries in Australia. What were you doing before you came to Kalamurina?
Well, we'd been up in the Northern Territory for the last 20 odd years in land management. At the time of seeing the position advertised for Kalamurina, we were living in Nhulunbuy in northeast Arnhem Land. And it was during COVID time, and our son needed to go to boarding school. The education offered in northeast Arnhem Land wasn't sort of up to our expectations, so we made the decision to put him into boarding school. And all my family are based in Adelaide, so it made sense to put him down there. But the complication being with COVID and being able to travel across borders, we thought, well, it's probably a sensible time to look at moving to South Australia ourselves to make seeing him and the rest of the family a lot easier. But primarily, I'd worked in various levels of government and non-for-profit Aboriginal organisations, and we both thought that we liked the sound of AWC, the fact that it's non-for-profit, it's science-led conservation, the range of properties owned around Australia really appealed to us. So we thought that we'd like to give AWC a go and see what it's like.
And I've been working in consulting for a long time, 15, 16 years. So I was away from home a lot. So it really appealed to get away from that and really start working conservation on the ground again, instead of being away from home and doing lots of different surveys, which were fantastic. But it was a really good opportunity to get back to conservation, to my roots. But we did try to get rid of this fly, but he's eluded us. So you're going to keep seeing us do this because we just can't. The flies are so friendly right now and we can't seem to get rid of them.
That puts us right there in the room with you. So that.
Yeah.
Annemarie, your background is in science, and you did a PhD on the purple-crowned fairy wren, one of the species that will be very familiar to AWC supporters. A beautiful little bird up in the Kimberley. Can you tell us a bit about that work?
Yeah, it was back in 2000 that I was studying them for 3 years. I was at the University of Florida doing my PhD, and I'd previously done my master's on parrots. And then this opportunity came up to come back to Australia. I'd been here before, loved Australia, and the opportunity came back to study this little bird, not in the Kimberley, but in the Northern Territory, in the Victoria River District, which was a vastly different habitat type than the pandanus, where it's usually found in the Kimberley. So I started that research and I went on for 3 years and finished my PhD, but I didn't end up going back to the States to continue with a postdoc or a job there, because I ended up at the time meeting Luke as part of during my studies, and here we are all these years later. I've been really fortunate that in consulting I've been able to go back to the VRD a lot to keep studying the wrens, for different organisations. So it's been really lucky that I have for the last 20 years been able to go back to the same locations and see the birds. So yeah, it's been really good.
It's quite difficult for us sometimes to fill positions in remote locations like Kalamurina, and we are so lucky to have, someone with your expertise, Annemarie, the background in science, and Luke, your long history working in remote communities and in this sort of conservation land management. So just want to say thank you for taking up the challenge and heading out to Kalamurina and being there now for, is it 3 years?
It's about 3.5 now,
Yeah, August will be 4 years, I think. Yeah, beginning of August, 4 years. So
yeah,
quite a while.
And we're really appreciative of the opportunity too. going back to what we were saying of living up in the tropics, we felt that, you know, we wanted to keep learning and to live in this desert environment and begin to learn how all this works has been really amazing and rewarding for us. And I suppose what we were seeking too is the challenges that a place like Kalamurina proposes to you, like with you know, managing a place with just the two of us out here for most of the time, and all the various challenges that come with that. And the flood is a case in point.
Yeah, I think it's the most challenging job I've ever had, probably. I have to say that. But also, you know, it's been fantastic all in all. But yeah, it's really been, there's been some really big challenges out here living in a place like this. And like the neighbours said, they think maybe we brought the rain with us. I've never been flooded in so much in my entire life as here in the desert.
Wow. Incredible. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the challenges. So it is very remote, as we've said. Paint us a picture of sort of where it is, so where it's situated in South Australia, because there's not so many reference points for people that aren't familiar with outback South Australia. What's the closest place you can buy an ice cream? You know, how do you get in there? What's your access point to Kalamurina?
Yeah, sure. So like looking from the north, you're about 350k south of Birdsville. You've got the Birdsville track, which basically runs between Maree in sort of the northern Flinders Ranges through to Birdsville in the Simpson Desert. And we're about halfway up. There's a small, well, basically a roadhouse or a pub called Mungarani, which is our turn off, and that's our sort of community hub, I suppose. That's where we get delivery sent to and all that sort of stuff. And we're a 60-kilometre drive out from there. So we're about 13 hours drive from Adelaide.
Yeah.
We usually do it over a couple of days because we usually, you know, each opportunity to go to town involves a lot of shopping, as you can imagine. We're usually pretty busy with all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we're also traveling with 2 dogs in the car, so you can't really do that 13 hours straight. It's a long stretch for the dogs. So yeah, we break it up into a day and a half each way. Yeah.
And I understand it must have been a very big shock last time, you know, coming in, knowing that these floodwaters were coming down. How do you sort of get in the mindset to prepare for, you know, possibly several months being isolated? What's the shopping list like, and how do you sort of manage the logistics of that?
I'll leave that to you.
All right. Well, I used to make a fairly detailed list and go into the supermarket and try and get everything on the list. These days, I don't do that anymore. I go in without a list now because it just takes too long. And Luke stays outside with the dogs, so I'm in there by myself. I do 2 big runs with the trolleys. When our son was with us, we used to do 4 trolleys sometimes, 2 each. But you just make sure you have all the basics. I do a bit of an inventory before I leave. Make sure I have all the basics, which after almost 4 years, you sort of have in your head exactly, you know, what you need. And then you try and get everything to the car. And if it's really hot, then, you know, you need to be careful with what you put where. And then we take everything home and unload it. That's a big job, and everything looks flush for a while because you have, so, you know, the fridges and the freezer are all full. And then as you go down the months, it just, you know, starts depleting. Try to have a really productive veggie patch so that you can, you know, supplement. So, and then like for this shop, this was a big one. This was, you know, I tried to shop for 2 to 3 months. So this was a bit stressful and we're in a big rush to get home. The dog had just had surgery. You know, like it's pretty hectic. And then once we got home, we had to go straight into the preparations for the flood. So this one was a little bit more hectic than our usual shops.
And we knew that the truck wasn't the better
truck wasn't
supply us with any additional supplies because, yeah, when the Cooper goes over the Birdsville track, there'll be no trucks doing deliveries anymore.
Yeah.
So we're used to getting one a fortnight or every 3 weeks.
Yeah, every 3 or 4 weeks we can get some food in that comes up from the truck from Adelaide, and we drive to Mungarani and pick that up. I did have 2 boxes of food that were delivered that were still at the pub, and our neighbours kindly flew them over in the chopper. They picked them up for us and then flew them over in the chopper, last week?
Yeah, that was very good of them.
Very nice of them.
Okay, so let's talk about the place itself. It's absolutely huge. So on that map I had up before, I think it's about 150 kilometres east-west, just the property itself. And then I've got a photo here of where your home is and where the operations base is. So can you just put us in the picture there of what you see when you look out the window?
Yeah, sure. So the homestead is positioned very close to our eastern boundary and close to our neighbouring station, the Cowrie station. They're only 11 kilometres from us, which is quite handy considering the size of the properties out here. As you enter our property, you've come in through Cowrie and it's stony desert there. So there's a lot of gibber plains, red stone plains for, as far as you can see. And then you start to see the start of the sand dunes, which is the start of the Terrari Desert, which is where the homestead's situated. And that's sort of characterised like the Simpson Desert too, but with these big sand dunes, which are usually in, rows of say 5 or 6 at a time. And then in between these, you get these big flat plains. The property's basically intersected by the Warburton Creek. It flows from east to west out to Kati Thanda-Lake Eyre. But it also sends water inland to fill up some inland lakes. So we've got freshwater ones which are filled up by the height of the flood. But you've also got a lot of salt lakes out there too, which are, got a salt crust similar to Lake Eyre itself. So there's that variety too, and obviously the riverine corridor, and then you've got associated sort of lowland sort of swamp areas and stuff like that. So there is quite a lot of diversity within the property, and it's it makes it really interesting driving around just to see how it changes. And more so when you're up in the air, and that's where you really get an appreciation for the expanse of the landscape, how huge it is.
What's some of the wildlife that you come across? So, as you're doing your day-to-day work around the base, what are you seeing?
Well, we'll talk about this.
We talked about this yesterday.
We mainly see the bird life is the most noticeable. And that fluctuates. So when you've got good seasons of good rain and your floods, the floods will bring in your all your water birds, like your pelicans and egrets and
you've got a lot of waders and
ducks. And
it's incredible, especially if you can get up from the air when you can see it. And when they start congregating as the water dries up, like now that it's, they're widely dispersed all through the property. It's hard to, get a good feel for it until a little bit later on. But there's been times where we've been out spotlighting at night, looking for feral animals, and you might not see anything. So that was the surprising thing when we first came here. And it's not until you do like a fauna survey where you have all your funnel traps and your pitfalls that you actually see what's really out here. And that's the amazing thing about it. It's not like, you're out here tripping over wildlife left and right. I mean, there are quite a few reptiles around and a lot of birds, obviously, but it's not what I expected, especially coming from up north. It's a lot more subtle than that. But then, when you are participating, say, in a fauna survey, that's when you really start seeing the diversity out here and how special that fauna assemblage really is out here. It's a very special place. It's very different from anything I've ever experienced.
And might be partially too, there's so many raptor species out here too. So
it's incredible.
Everything's wary about being picked off by them, so everything keeps their heads down.
It's so often the case in Australia. You go out into landscapes expecting to see lots and lots of animals, and you don't. They're either nocturnal or they're small, or for a whole lot of them, they're extinct. And we know that there are mammals missing from Kalamurina. It's very close to where the last recorded sort of documented evidence of the lesser bilby was collected, and that's a nice point of relevance for AWC because our logo is based on that species, the lesser bilby. The 1960s, that was the last specimen of that collected. Very close to there. Some people say if the lesser bilby does still exist anywhere, it's on Kalamurina. So keep a look out. Hope you see one.
We're always looking out at night. Always looking out. And like one night Luke found a Woma python out there, which was, I missed it, of course, but he always seems to get lucky with these kind of sightings.
Very special to see.
Yeah.
So trying to protect over 500,000 hectares of those very different habitats with limited access to lots of the property, what are the main conservation programs that you're running there? So, I imagine weeds and feral animals are part of the concern.
Yeah, definitely. We're fortunate in that we have no fire here. The vegetation typically doesn't hold enough fuel to carry fire. I think there has been cases back in history where there has been fires, but that takes the pressure off on that front, because with two people trying to manage fire on a landscape of this scale, it'd be near impossible. And on the weed front, we're very fortunate, and we were really surprised coming here, being at the end of such an enormous catchment, that we don't have more weeds here. But basically, since being here, we've worked on a couple of populations of buffel grass, which we've got well under control. And just one woody weed species we've found one species of, so one plant of rather. So that's under control as far as we know too. So again, if we had a property full of weeds, it'd be impossible for us to work on them alone. So again, we're quite fortunate, and I suppose concerned with these floods of what might be flowing downstream and taking hold on Kalamurina, but only time will tell. But on that front, we're always vigilant whenever we're driving around, just keeping an eye on anything that might look suspicious, to go and check it out, just to try and catch things before they establish.
And the weed hygiene measures for any visitors.
Yes, and for ourselves.
For ourselves, that's
every vehicle that comes in has to be thoroughly washed down, and clean out the floor mats and all that sort of stuff. Just to try and prevent anything being introduced by visitors. That brings us down to feral animals, which is the most important work we do out here. I suppose we'll start with the large feral animals. We've got, being the desert, we've got a population of camels that come and go. They sort of vary nomadic across the whole landscape, but there are certainly times where we encounter on Kalamurina. So our main control method, that is aerial shooting, which is the most sort of effective given the size of the property and the lack of access tracks and all that sort of stuff. They're very mobile animals, so being up in the air is the most humane and effective way of dealing with them. Likewise with feral pigs. So these floods that we're having now, we'll see an increase in feral pigs coming down following the channels through from Queensland. So again, they're basically managed through aerial shooting, but we also do some on-ground poisoning and trapping when the conditions are dry and they're restricted to areas where the fresh water is. We do have to manage some cattle from time to time. We do have some coming through the neighbour's place, because camels and cattle don't always respect fences. So we spend a lot of effort repairing fences and also keeping an eye out for cattle. We do try and muster them out as much as possible. And when they're way out west, sometimes we do have to destroy them. Then we've got, I suppose in number and flying over the place, the most impact on Kalamurina you see is from rabbits. We've got so much sand dune country, which is perfect for their warrens. They're pretty hardy. I wouldn't have expected them to be able to live out at some of these, such a desolate landscape during the height of summer when it's, high 40 degrees and all that sort of stuff. But very persistent. So we have been trying to control them using calicivirus, biocontrol, because we see it's the only effective way to try and control them on a landscape scale. So far we haven't been successful, but we're currently having another go at it, particularly while we've flooded in. We're just going to do some trials on the local populations here, and because the environmental conditions have to be so spot on for it to be effective, and they are at the moment. So we're going to give it a go in the small space that we've got, that we can access at the moment. Then you've got your I suppose your smaller carnivores like your cats and your foxes, which are of high concern given that a lot of our threatened species are small mammals and reptiles and birds and so forth, that obviously they're the prey to those animals. So control on them is difficult. We do a lot of sort of surveillance work with cameras to try and focus our efforts, and we do a bit of trapping, opportunistic ground shooting and so forth. But again, it'd be nice if there was a biocontrol
It's a long way off.
Yeah.
But it's hard on a property this size with 2 people. Like, you know, you might go out all night and not see one cat. It's not like they're very thick on the ground, like some other properties in other areas. So it doesn't make sense, like, especially with the limited amount of tracks we have, to spend every night going out there to shoot one cat. And it just doesn't make sense for us. Yeah. So you
And
really,
same with trapping.
and same with trapping.
Yeah.
It's a lot of effort that goes into trapping, and you might get 1 in 2 weeks. So, you know, you have to, you know, weigh that up. Like, what's the most effective way to manage this? Yeah, and that's where we're informed by the science team and their surveys and their priorities. So whatever comes out of the surveys, that's what we work on. Like, these are the priorities, and then that's how we manage that.
You've got your work cut out for you there. So, sounds like. So I know you had a very busy year planned for 2025, including, you know, there is a limited sort of visitation program that you run there. I'll just say now, for anyone who's going to ask, I know there's lots of people going to ask, at the moment, we don't know when access will be possible to Kalamurina again. So we'll update our website when that information changes, but at the moment there's no access, at least for a couple of months. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's what we're thinking at this point.
At this point, at least, yeah.
We really just don't know how slowly or fast that the water's going to subside, and then the tracks to actually dry out to be able to use them again.
Yeah, the clay pans on both sides of us are underwater. We can't drive anywhere in the vehicles. Everything's underwater. You know, there's all these clay pans between us and the neighbours that are completely filled with water. The main track is underwater. The track to the campground is completely underwater. So we can't go anywhere. We take the buggy to the airstrip to get the mail, because thank goodness the airstrip didn't go under. And that's as far as we can go, really. So right now it's a matter of waiting to see how long it's going to take for that water to subside, what the damage is to the tracks. We don't even know what the damage is to the campground. So yeah, there's no way to get there.
Let's just pull up this map again. So this is from, I think, late April, so a few weeks ago, when those channels in Western Queensland, Diamantina, the Cooper, were absolutely surging with water. How much notice do you get that floodwaters are coming? Because it obviously takes time to run down. Are you sort of getting updates day by day about the progress of that front of the water?
Well, yeah, when the rain started falling heavy in Queensland, we knew it was going to eventually end up down here. That's the way it runs. And it always takes a long time, but each year it happens at, you know, different rates, different flows, because you've got the catchment of the Georgina and the Diamantina. They're separate catchments, and they flow at different rates or come down at different times. So a lot of it we monitor using the Bureau of Meteorology website with the river heights to sort of, you know, monitor progress, but also just talking with the local community. Everyone's, you know, knows people up there, and, you know, hearing different things. So there's a lot of discussion and predictions on what's going to happen and when, which is really handy for us because we're obviously new to the whole situation.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, you know, they say the Warburton flows every 3 to 4 years, but we've been here 3.5, and it's flowed each year for the last 4. So yeah, as they say, they think we've brought the rain with us.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. And this year, I suppose the SES was in contact with us. The neighbours, once it gets to, say, Birdsville, and you have an idea of how much water's in Birdsville, then you're sort of going, okay, now we know what's coming towards us. The pilots from Air Rights Air, they fly over it, and they'll give us a call or send us a text going, there's a lot of water, or it's here, or it's there, the front's here. And then once it gets to Cowrie, that's the most useful, because that's when the neighbours, we get really detailed, you know, reports on what's happening and what to expect. And especially because they've been through it before. That's been really useful.
Yeah. And it's surprising how slowly it can come. We were told that this one was going to be, you know, the highest and the fastest in quite some time. Yet there's so much country that it has to fill up all these side lakes and channels and floodplains, that it's it does happen at a slower rate than you anticipate, which is handy, because we had a lot of preparations to do before it came.
So it was, you know, it was a very stressful couple of weeks.
I've just got to follow up with the the homestead and sort of the immediate surrounds in between the sand dunes and this, I think you call it the bund wall, which is sort of running across the middle of that photo. So that's been put in place specifically for this occasion when floodwaters are threatening. What was the priority in that sort of week or two? Was it not even a week maybe when you were preparing for those floodwaters to arrive? So sort of setting yourself up for a really big flood.
Yeah, exactly, Joey. So the background with the bund walls, there's actually two of them. And the big one you could see in the photo there was put in after the 1974 flood, I believe. And the 1974 flood saw this homestead underwater. The water was halfway up the roof. So the homestead location wasn't chosen very well. And it would be great if it was up in the sand dunes and then you wouldn't have to worry about a thing. So yes, in that photo there, you're seeing the first bund wall, and that basically kept the water out of all that foreground low area between the two dunes that you can see. The flood got to within a metre of the top of that one. And if it went over that wouldn't have been a great deal. That's mainly our dump and our material storage sort of area for steel and pavers and whatever else. And then the larger bund wall was the real priority because that one hadn't been maintained since it went in post 74, I don't think. There was massive sections that had been excavated for use on roads and so forth. So that was the main priority at that point, was to start rebuilding that. The water erosion had sort of made it into, Swiss cheese. There was holes all through it. You couldn't even walk over it. So basically, we put the backhoe to work and started a small burrow pit on the base of it and just kept carting the material up and filling the holes. But it soon became apparent to me that I wasn't going to be able to do it with just the backhoe alone. And our manager, Joe, suggested we get someone in to help us, and we're a little apprehensive at first because we thought, we don't want to cause them a situation where they're flooded in as well. But we thought, well, worst comes to worst, we can chop them out. So we got John Massingham from Kangaroo Island, and he was great. He was a real gun on the backhoe. And that old tipper truck you see, we'd recently acquired that, and I was still fixing it up. So while he was on the backhoe, I could prioritise fixing this tipper truck up and got that operational. And then things become a lot more efficient after that. We could, do 6 runs at a time, 6 loads at a time, and it really sped things up. And we finished the wall while he was here. And shortly after that, the backhoe hydraulics popped a big leak, and I couldn't do any more, but I was satisfied with how much progress we'd made. And at the end of the day, we didn't need it, but at the time we thought we did. And now it's fixed up. It's it's a good asset going forward for future floods.
And we got all the valuables up on the sand dune as well.
That was Annemarie's priority.
Getting all the valuables and a camp set up. So we got all that done, but that was a big push for 2 weeks, but it's, got it done. Now we get to take it all back down.
We're just taking everything back down at the moment. Getting life back to normal.
It's such a hassle having to move everything up to the sand dunes and have this camp up there, all your belongings, and then moving it all back down again. But we are really glad that your home didn't go underwater. And then I've got a few more bits of video here. We're a little bit short on time, but just wanted to show what it's like now with all that water in the landscape, and just tell us about sort of how you're getting around and how much of the place you can access by boat.
Okay, so as Annemarie was saying, at the moment, like both going east and west, our main track just goes underwater. We can go down to the south for a little way. We took a buggy down to Lake Maimai the other day to see how. So that's an example of one of the inland lakes that gets filled up from the rise of the floodwaters, and the track that usually skirts the edge of that was well underwater, and that was fantastic to see such heights reached. And it'll provide a lot of water to all the old coolabars there and so forth, and that'll be a great refuge for water birds.
Oh, here we go. And the other way to get around